understanding of the Canadian healthcare system, more specifically in Ontario. And so we thought, if we can't do it here on our home ground where we really understand the different influencers, then we shouldn't be ready to go further.
Innovation and innovation adoption, particularly in healthcare, is a challenge. I think we probably would all agree. I think it appears to be a greater challenge in Canada and in Ontario. You've also talked, I think, Jeff, about the US market. How do you feel that that's changing at all? Do you feel that you've had to look at your business models and consider other countries outside of Canada? Many of us as entrepreneurs have had to go elsewhere first and gain acceptance and then come back to Canada. That's also a challenge when we go elsewhere and they ask us if we've had it adopted in our home country. So I don't know if any of you have had that experience or if you've got some comment on the market.
I can start with that from our experience. So we're just 5 years in. We probably had a viable product after first initial pilot testing after about a year or two. So relatively early days. We do have a number of clients in both acute and chronic care, mainly in Canada. And one of the reasons is we wanted to make our mistakes here before going to other healthcare systems, and mostly because we had a better understanding of the Canadian healthcare system, more specifically in Ontario. And so we thought, if we can't do it here on our home ground where we really understand the different influencers, then we shouldn't be ready to go further. And so we got to a point where we felt comfortable enough, and we're out there in Canada, and now most recently we've actually spread to the US and also in the NHS in the UK as well. And the NHS is interesting. It's actually quite similar to the Canadian system. The US, I'm still learning about. I can't say that I'm an expert today. What I will say is, interestingly, the conversations that I have with providers, so I mainly speak one-on-one with the physicians, surgeons, patients, even the CEOs of hospitals, those conversations are actually pretty similar to the ones that I have here. They are focused on very similar outcomes. The clinical outcomes, reducing 30-day readmission rates, shifting costs. So far, not a big difference in that way, though I know that overall it is quite a different system.
Yeah, for Highland, the drug development process taking so long and the regulatory hurdles being so high, we are not selling a product right now. We're still a year and a half, 2 years away. So our capital needs are massive, and you need to get investors that are comfortable investing, and so you have to offer them a big potential return. So that means you're in the States, you're not in Canada. Canada is unfortunately, it's just so much smaller, it's a bit of an afterthought. But it goes a bit further than that. I would say that David, he started as a Wall Street analyst, he said, hey, how am I going to make this work? I've got to have to go after indications or markets that are big so I can raise money. Also with ADHD and the stimulants that we're reformulating, they're very effective. So they're very well known. We're in a 505(b)(2) pathway. So it speeds, it's not fast, but it's slightly faster progress through clinical trials and slightly less expensive because you can run smaller trials to show an effect as compared to something, let's say, that has a cardiac effect or cancer or so on, where there's going to be, the clinical trials will be years and years long. So we pretty much had to go after the States right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think similar medical device is not as much capital requirement or time as the pharma, but it is substantial. And our decision was based mainly on regulatory, a large component was on the regulatory path. Our path, luckily, in the US was a 510K, which is a easier path than going through a PMA. And so we chose the FDA as or the US market as our primary entry point. Having said that, CE and Health Canada are very tightly aligned, but we would have gone to Europe first if it was as opposed to Canada. And it's just a matter of accessing, getting sites. We might get some early research sales in the Canadian market with groups that are close to us and can help us build out. And we're in fact working with Princess Margaret Hospital is world renowned, and that's been extremely valuable to us. But as a market where we would invest our to commercially ramp up, you have to be in the larger markets to, again, access the capital that's required and show the return potential.
I love that you're working with patients. I'm a big patient advocate. I I'm involved with patient associations as well. And focus groups. I come originally from Procter & Gamble, so we use focus groups. You're always putting, the customer at the center and really understanding what they want. So I just wanted to ask each of you, you're sort of in different businesses, so you're right with the patient and providers and get that sort of feedback. How have the others, have you formalized getting, the sort of client feedback or, the ultimate end consumer? I mean, there's clinical trials and whatnot, but do you look at what competitors have done and, I don't know, just open it up?
Well, I know at Highland, we spend a lot of money on market research and trying to, define the problem. So, with stimulants for ADHD, people used to take fast-acting versions, then extended release came out in the market, and that just, everyone switched to extended release. The problem that people ran into is the onset of effects started to slow down. So you were basically not medicated in the early morning routine hours. So we did a lot of research with healthcare professionals and with parents saying, how big is the problem? What are you doing about it? And in a lot of cases, what you'll find is not a lot of people are talking about that problem. So is it a problem at all? And then what you realize is, well, doctors don't really want to talk about problems they can't solve. So if they say, yeah, your kid's unmedicated in the morning, I don't know what to do. You can try waking them up 2 hours earlier and dosing them and seeing if they can go back to sleep. And it's only through market research that you get a handle on these problems. And you realize, well, actually 40% of parents, that's exactly what they do. They wake their kids up early, they give them their medication, and they hopefully go back to sleep. So that is not an ideal solution. So it can really, understanding the market and the market size, obviously it helps when you're raising money, but you need that outside research, or at least we do, to show other people, to say, look, it's not just us making this up, it's not just our idea, there's some validation to what we're doing, and it's coming from the patient population, like the parents and the caregivers and the kids. So.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. We do the same. We, we engage groups to do surveys for us. We reach out directly and that. And the more you can formalize that and be able to refer quantitatively to information that is being gained from the market directly and specifically about the issue that you're facing is valuable, and it's invaluable to you to really understand that. I find that sometimes it sounds easy to go out and build a survey and ask a bunch of questions, and with your time at P&G, you'll know it's a very complex to ask the right questions, make sure that you're not leading them to tell you what you want to hear, or that it gives you the wrong information just in the way the wording is. And so it is worthwhile to engage people that understand how to ask those questions and get to what you are trying to get at. So I think that's valuable. On the other side, there's all sorts of general research reports that are, valuable, and Mars does an amazing job for early stage companies at helping early stage companies access some of that information, because it is a big choice when you're, as I said, if you're not taking a salary and you're a week away from making payroll, to spend $5,000 on a report. So having access to those early stage things resources is extremely valuable.
We do the same, and I guess at QSC Health we're lucky because a number of our staff are actually researchers, so they have research backgrounds, and so when we need to know something new or we just update ourselves continuously with respect to what's out there in the marketplace, what other solutions are out there in terms of apps. Specifically, and even patient-provider perspectives, qualitative work like that, so we constantly do that research. And then we actually go beyond the focus group, and ideally, whenever we can, we actually use experience-based co-design processes where we put patients and providers in the same room designing the solution together, which is completely a different experience than if you run separate patient focus groups and provider focus groups. Inevitably, they will say different things, and then you as the entrepreneur has to go back and say, okay, I have these two disparate messages. Now what does my solution look like? But if you have them in the same room, the conversation actually starts to revolve around processes. And patients suddenly start to understand provider workflows and vice versa, and then the solution really starts to grow out of that. And so whenever possible, we actually try to use that kind of a design process. Yeah.